Hi guys, today I want to talk about my favorite subject. It's the room. Maybe some of you know that I started as a keyboarder, so I played keyboard instruments. Now the thing about keyboard instruments is that they don't really have a room sound by themselves unless you add one. And I found that whenever I wanted to blend my key sound and my vocals that I recorded myself together, it wouldn't always fit in the same way, and I was wondering why that was, until I discovered the secrets of the room sound. From then I just started to experiment. I started to put mattresses against the wall, I started to build stuff myself, basically try to get my hands on any acoustic treatment I could, experimented with it in different places, until I realized just how much it matters that you have the right room. Unfortunately, not all of us are in the position where they just go into Abbey Roads and record something and it sounds nice from scratch. There are definite advantages of big rooms. So if you're in a position where you have a big room, that's, well, I mean, that's almost the best thing you could have. The reason for that is that when you record, even vocals, when you record vocals in a big room and you stand in the middle of the room, that the difference between the volume of the vocals that go into the mic directly and the vocals that come back from the walls, the difference in volume is so large that it almost won't matter. It's all about reflected sounds, and when your reflected sound has very little energy left, then obviously you won't hear it as much in your vocal sound, and you have more freedom. You can add whatever you want afterwards, and the effects will blend, and it will just, in general, it will just blend better. If you have a large room where you can change the acoustics, where you can put baffles up, where you can change the character of the room, that's even better. That's what professional studios have. Unfortunately, us little people in home studios, we don't really have the same thing. So we have to experiment a little bit. Now the problem is that normally when you put acoustic treatment up, you dampen the treble more than the bass frequencies. It's just because the wavelength of the treble is so small that it's all about cycles. So if you imagine a very short wavelength, and it can run through those different cycles on a very short space, so, and it will lose all its energy. A wavelength which is several meters for a bass frequency, it can do the same thing, but it will take a lot longer until it actually does the same cycles as a treble frequency, if that makes any sense. So the important thing here is that we try to dampen treble frequencies less than bass frequencies. Now, how do we achieve that? I did a lot of research on this, and I eventually ended up building things called tube traps. You can buy them. I think they're about 300 or 400 pounds even for a piece, which is quite expensive, and they work in a way that they take out bass more than treble frequencies, and professional studios in America use them a lot. I heard that's what people tell me, but they're not very spread in Europe at the moment, I believe. So that's the thing I did. The good thing about them is that you can put them anywhere in the room because they're freestanding objects. You can put them around the drum kit, you can put them around the guitar amp, you can put them around the singer. That's why I love them so much, because they, and if you get in trouble with your wife or with your husband, and everything is just clogging up the rooms, the good thing about the tube traps is they are not fixed to anything. You just put them in the garage and they're fine there. If you're any good at DIY, it's a fairly easy thing to make. So you want to treat corners first, um, and see what it sounds like. The best thing for me was to always treat the room a little bit, and then do some singing through a microphone, one of your songs that you've recorded. Experiment with it. Every song doesn't always necessarily work with the same room, so you've got to be careful there. But the good thing about keyboards is that you can take all the effects away and you have a fairly dry sound, and if that dry sound mixes up well with your room, then you have a very good basis for starting. Don't hang blankets up in your room on every single wall, on the ceiling, and put thick carpets. Then you're gonna have a completely dead, which it sometimes works. It really depends what you want to record, but from my experience, it's good to just leave a tiny bit of life in the room, and even for drums, I mean, drums is a difficult subject because you best record drums in a big room, but we don't always have a big room, and it can be fairly difficult to record drums. But with my experience and with what I've done with my room, where I've almost killed it but not quite, I get fairly good results even on drums. Make sure the room is not too small. I've once made the mistake that I thought, oh, I'll have a little cupboard in the corner where I record my vocals, and I left it pretty much untreated. It sounded horrible. Okay, if you're trying to record vocals in a small room that's pretty much untreated, it's never going to blend with anything. In general, it won't. If you think you just put a blanket against the wall, it will work, but it's about the thickness of the blanket. You're basically talking about the blanket being a quarter of the wavelength to have any effect. Let's say you have a wavelength of 1 kilohertz. 1 kilohertz is about, I think it's 31.5 centimeters long, the wavelength, which means a quarter of that. So that's, what's that, 7 or 8 centimeters, something like that. So you would have to have a blanket that's at least that thick. And that's of course just half the truth, because professional studios use deflectors as well. Coming back to 1 kilohertz, if you have something that is 31.5 centimeters wide, then it will reflect 1 kilohertz. Yeah. So we established earlier about 31.5 centimeters is the frequency of 1 kilohertz. If you have something that is about that size, then you will reflect 1 kilohertz. Now, if you imagine you could make an object that reflects certain frequencies in a certain way and certain directions, that's a deflector basically. So by deflecting certain things in certain ways at certain distances, you start breaking up these things. And we talked earlier about this. The more something travels around and bounces against something else, the more energy is gonna lose. So deflectors work a little bit like that. You lose the energy before it can do any harm. Deflection is also the thing that when people talk about no parallel walls in the studio, and when people build these funny shapes with strange ceilings and walls that are kind of, well, not parallel, and it all breaks it up and makes it smoother. You get a smoother reverb rather than just if you know what a ping pong delay is. So if you have a room in your house that's a little bit funny shaped, that's not quite straight, where you might have or let's say something that's not quite rectangular, something just a little bit funny, or with a bookshelf. Bookshelves are really good. You can stack something in there, and books in general kind of work very well as deflectors, just because they're doing exactly this thing. They're not all sticking out in the same way out of the shelf. Like everything gets kind of reflected in a different way, so it takes energy away from the sound wave that hits it. Right, I'm just going to show you what my rooms look like and what I've done here. These are the tube traps, so I've got about 16 of those. I can move them around. I can put them into my I can put them into the control room. I can put them into my tracking room. I can just change them pretty much, you know, I can change them pretty much to my needs. Just on the right of me on the wall I've got a couple of panels that is basically, you can see they're quite thick. This is what I talked about earlier. So they don't only take the treble away, but they take a little bit of the lower frequencies away as well. This is basically this glass fiber foam stuff that you use for building, and you put it in a frame, and then you could put some nice fabric around it, and then the things look like this. Here in the corner I've got a few things that are that you can buy, and as I said, corners are generally nice. I originally planned to use this corner as my vocal corner for recording vocals, until I realized when I record vocals it sounded better somewhere else in the room. I left the corner as it was, moved my microphone, and I recorded somewhere else now in the same room, but I just found it sounded better. Yeah, and then on the ceiling here I've got this thing, looks like sausage, but it's basically just a blanket wrapped around some pole. It's all a little bit DIY, but in the end people that listen to the recording afterwards, they won't know what the room looked like. In the tracking room downstairs I've got again tube traps. There are a few panels on the ceiling, as you can see. There are my famous DVD stacking method, where I use deflection. If you have a lot of DVDs or a lot of books, and you have shelves that you can put on the wall, there's almost nothing better than that. Fill them up and stack things randomly, and you can deflect the sound very, very nicely. It's the cheapest thing, or go into a charity shop if you want to buy loads of DVDs or videos and then stack them in a completely random way. It works brilliantly. I've just spoken to another engineer recently who came here and said, wow, this is the room sounds amazing, and it does, because I didn't just kill it. I used these deflectors. I have them on a couple of walls, and I use the tube traps around the drums, or a guitar sounds brilliant here to record. The drums don't sound bad. Obviously you won't get that big drum sound with a nice reverb. You have to, well, maybe just add a little bit of reverb afterwards and see if you can find some nice effects that work. These are all just suggestions. You can see what I do, and it works for me. Okay guys, I hope this was helpful. Please subscribe to the channel. Ask me any questions. I'll see whether I can continue this series. The next things will be mics, I believe. So we'll talk about microphones in the next episode. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much.